Oh, y'all are gonna make me start cracking my whip. You know, somebody said, are you gonna ring the cowbell to get people back in their seats? And I just hate that. But if you'll bring me all right, so someone has a cowbell, but I'm also much more open to other ideas, like please just come back when I tell you. I think that should work much better. All right, so let's talk about discovery. We talked about this a little bit this morning. Discovery is very broken. Now, how many of you have ever heard a sales trainer say, discovery is the most important part of the sales process? Anybody? Okay, awesome. Has anybody ever seen a sales trainer explain why that is, or what discovery should consist of? Or, yes, okay, so because we have some expert salespeople in the room. Okay, other than Ian, who you're gonna hear from, and me, okay? Other than that, anybody have like a solid discovery process? Like what should the questions be? What's the goal that I am looking to achieve? Anybody? A couple? Okay, so you will in the next 45 minutes. I know, big claim, but that's where we're going. So by way of quick background, I know most of you know my background, but I want to give that to you again in case you're newer to my world. But I love sales. I think nothing happens in your business until you make a sale. Sale is like the engine that makes the whole train move. So I love sales. I don't think sales is slimy or sleazy or gross. I love studying sales. I love helping people solve problems, which is what sales is. If you have a problem and I can help you solve it, why would we not do business together? So that comes, I've probably read, I don't know, 150 or more sales books. There are some out there I have not read, but I'm also a student of sales in that I sit down with coaches and I drill them and I'm like, wait, you just made like this fluffy statement and I need you to unpack that a little bit because I need more than that. So at dinner tonight, perhaps ask me about my Chartex story of how I hid in the bathroom because Alex Rogers is kind of a larger than life personality and I was like scared and in tears, and I would be happy to share that story. It feels like an eternity ago, but it was only about 7-8 years ago. Did Sandler training for a couple of years. True Methods, I was a Pika-ite for a couple of years. I've sat under the gap selling author for a couple of his small group sessions. So I love sales. And then in March of last year, I wrote a book. It hit the bestseller list. I was stunned. And I've gotten about 70-ish 4- and 5-star reviews. I have gotten a couple of 1-star reviews from grumpy people who say, there's nothing worthwhile in this book. I'm like, okay, go buy another book and maybe talk to the other 65 people who thought it was fantastic. But it's okay. Everyone's gonna be a hater at one point in time or another. So if you don't have a copy of my book, don't buy it yet. I know that's like the weirdest thing ever for a salesperson to say, but I have the mixed Audible files in my inbox. I got them about 3 weeks ago, and there was no way I was going to try to do an Audible book launch leading into this event, but it's going to happen probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So if you prefer to read, do get the book now. It's on Amazon. If you prefer to listen, just wait. You're on my list. I will let you know when it's available. And it is a great book. And I think every author says that. Like you've never had nobody has an ugly baby, right? But so I published it, and then about a year later, I'm literally recording the Audible, and I'm going, this is really good. Like this is really good stuff. And I think though, if I had to pick one thing that makes this book phenomenal, it's that it is written from someone in your industry for someone in your industry. Because I'm not particularly good at taking like a theoretical marketing book or a theoretical sales book and pulling out the truths, but then applying them to my world. Like I can recognize, yeah, that should work. That's a great truth. That's a great premise. But how do I apply it to the road that I'm marching on? And so that's what I hear from a lot of people is that it's written for me. And it is. It's a fantastic book. So if you're a reader, get it now. If you're an Audible person, just wait. So What I'm going to cover over the next 30, 35 minutes is all about discovery. So I'm going to show you and tell you why I believe discovery is broken. And then I'm going to show you, for some of you, for the very first time, how to complete an effective discovery. How do we get to the end of discovery and know with like a benchmark or a metric, did I do a good job? Let's do that again. Did I not do a good job? Let's fix that. And how do I measure that? So I want to show you that. I want to bring this out of like the ethereal discovery is important, and I want to make it very tactical and tangible. And then we're going to talk about some strategies for uncovering business challenges and goals and priorities. You've heard a couple of people talking about the fact that those are the needle movers. It's those things, my business goals, my dreams, my direction. That's what I buy based on. That's the emotional sale I want to buy to protect that. And then I'm probably going to just briefly talk about overcoming technical bias because John did such a great job on that talk. I'm just going to give you maybe a 2 or 3 minute synopsis of the way that I perceive it, and then we'll do a quick wrap up and maybe take some Q&A. So, why discovery is broken. So we talked a little bit ago, and most of you raised your hand saying, yes, I understand that discovery is important, but there is a bit of a question around why is it important? And how do I make it effective? What's the goal? Where am I trying to get to so that I can guide the conversation and lead that conversation? And that's part of why discovery is so ineffective, is there's not a whole lot of deep training on like what is discovery. But specifically in this room, the biggest reason why discovery is broken is that most MSPs and MSSPs are walking into a sales call and you're making huge assumptions. Because in your head, you've got the cyber defense matrix, you've got all of the statistics about why they logically need to go with your solution. You know all of these things. You know that you're gonna do a discovery and you're gonna find like a random server in the closet that somehow, shockingly, no one knew existed. Or, oh, we have APIs running and we don't even know who created those. Or, well, we have some employees on site and we have some employees off site, and do we really need to cover them all? Can we just cover some of the employees but not all? You know all of these things intuitively. And I know the answer is no, we have to cover them all. But if you make the assumption that your prospects already know what you know, there's a massive disconnect. And so I'm going to draw a little bit of a silly analogy, but there's a movie. It's one of those end of the world apocalyptic type movies, and some of you will have seen it. But there's a scene in this movie where this very brand new geologist or something is drilling ice cores in Antarctica. And he's like standing on the ice, and his mentor is like, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" And he's like, "I'm ready, boss." And so the mentor like walks away and goes into the tent. Like, what can possibly go wrong, right? Like, we're just drilling, we're pulling out big old cones of ice. Like, I don't know what we do with that. I'm not a geologist. But he puts the device into the ice, and the ice cracks. It's like the whole glacier cracks. And the poor like brand new intern guy kind of looks around, and he kind of looks at his device, and he's like, did I do that? Like, did I crack the glacier? And as he's standing at this tiny little crack, it starts to make more noise, and it starts to crack, and it's almost like a cartoon, because pretty soon he's standing on this glacier that is just spreading apart, and you're in your head, you're like, you gotta make a choice, man. You gotta go one way or the other. This is not gonna work. It's just gonna keep getting wider and wider. And I'm not gonna tell you the end of the story. You have to go watch the movie, but that is the challenge, because your clients and your prospects think there's like this little crack that you're there to solve. There's just this little problem. And I need you to just, I don't know, bring a bucket of water and pour it on the crack, and it'll just magically fix itself. And that's what you do, right? It's kind of magical, and I don't really understand, but just fix the little crack. So there is a massive gap between where you think what you know is true. Like, that is not a small little crack. Like, glaciers don't just crack. In very short order, this is going to be massive issue. But your clients are like, well, just put a Band-Aid on it. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what you do, but just magically fix it. And so this happens anytime you walk into a discovery meeting where they use the word just. Well, I just want to be able to print. Or I just want you to return my phone call promptly. Or I just want to be able to spend the least amount I possibly can, but get the best cybersecurity protection there is. So that's a little clue that when you're hearing that word or you're sensing that attitude, you need to understand that there is a massive gap between the reality, which is what you know, and what your prospect believes. And if you make the mistake of assuming that you're on the same page, you are going to do a poor job at discovery because you're just going to kind of wing your way through it. And you're not going to dig in, and you're not going to be curious and ask, well, why do you think this is just a Band-Aid? I mean, why do you think we just need a Band-Aid? Is it possible, I understand you're describing a crack. Is it possible that's a symptom of a larger problem? Well, what could that larger problem be? And how could that impact you? And would you care if it was a glacier that, so we'll get into some more tangible examples in a few minutes. But that is one of the biggest challenges with discovery, is that you're assuming all of the knowledge that you have in your head that is true and accurate and valid, that somehow your prospects know about it. And it's not your fault for making that assumption, because you are reading the white papers and you're attending things like this and you're going to webinars and you are being inundated with all of this information. So it's very obvious to you that there are massive issues, and that if you're talking to an organization that hasn't addressed cybersecurity or compliance in 7 years, that they are woefully behind. And so you are studying and you're creating frameworks and you're wrestling with this stuff, but your prospects are not. So you have to understand that there is a gap between the way that you're each approaching this conversation. They're looking for a Band-Aid. They are expecting to pay for a Band-Aid, and you are coming in with a huge amount of knowledge. So if you think of nothing else around discovery, I want you to understand that discovery is not for you, because you're not going to uncover anything new. You know about the server, you know about the couple of kinds of employees, you know they may or may not be a little price conscious, you may know that you're going to need, these things. There's almost nothing that is going to surprise you in a discovery conversation. But discovery isn't actually for you. Discovery is for the prospect. You're helping the prospect to discover where they're being underserved. You're helping the prospect to discover that this small crack that they think is just a minor inconvenience is actually a symptom of a greater problem. So don't assume that you're on the same page with your prospect. Now, there's another challenge inside of discovery, and it's all about listening. And if you've studied sales for any amount of time, you will know that sales trainers talk about listening and active listening and asking open-ended questions, which is actually not 100% true. There's a valid point in time where you should ask close-ended questions. It's a different topic. But 81% of buyers want the salesperson to listen to them. Makes sense, right? Now, I suspect the 20% of people or 19% of people that said, I don't want you to listen to me, maybe they're in the DISC quadrant where they're saying, just give me the numbers. I don't want to talk. I don't want you asking me questions. Like, just tell me how much this is going to cost, which can sometimes be frustrating in a sales conversation because you're like, well, I can give you a dollar figure, but I haven't even built the value yet. But in any event, 80+% of buyers want to be listened to. Now, how many of you think in a sales situation that you are a good listener? Raise your hand. Okay, look around. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Look around. Is that about 80% of the room? 81. Perfect. Well, statistically, 3/4 of you are lying. 24% of sellers actually listen. 24%. So when I just had you look around the room, I'm sure that you were telling the truth and everybody else in the room was lying, because 24% of sellers actually listen. So I want to tell you a story, a real life story from my world that illustrates this dichotomy perfectly. So my husband and I just finished redecorating our kitchen. And it was a typical homeowner project where it's supposed to take X amount of time, and it takes 3, 4, 5, 6X the time. The budget was actually decent, but the time was like, oh my goodness, this is never going to be done. So the last step of this process was to replace all of the Venetian blinds in our kitchen. And we've got a sunroom. So we had 4 small blinds that we needed, 1 enormous blind, a half round, and then we wanted to replace the vertical blinds for the sliding glass door. So we're not talking about a massive project, but we're not talking about a small project either. And my husband and I are not particularly handy. So the option of going to Home Depot and then getting home and finding out that Jennifer may or may not have measured correctly, and then the right screws are not in there, and then you're trying to drill in and there's metal there where it's supposed to be drywall is just like awful. Like we've been through this kind of thing, it's awful. So I'm like, why don't we just call in one of those blind places? And I know it's gonna be a little more expensive, but like it's done. You write the check, they come in, they think it's perfect, hopefully, and you're done. So we call a couple of blind places, we bring one out to the house, and I had told my husband, I'm like, it's gonna cost this much per blind, and then this one's enormous, and this is half round. So I'm like, we're probably talking about like 4K, $4,000 for blinds, which is like, there's so many more fun things to spend $4,000 on than vertical blinds. But let that be a lesson to you, because when you're going out and having a conversation with a prospect and you're quoting them $3,000 a month for managed services and managed security, there's a whole lot more fun things that they could spend that $3,000 on, like weekly, monthly, daily pizza parties for the whole team, and you're going, buy my security, right? So, and I'm not saying that it's not worthwhile. Of course it is, but you need to understand that same dichotomy is going through their head. So I say to my husband, we'll bring them out, but we've got to be honest, because it's going to be about $4,000. Are we willing to spend that? He says yes. So they come out, and they do the dog and pony show. He comes in the door and he makes 3 trips into the house, all of his briefcases and samples, and then he opens up the conversation and says, so what are we doing? And I'm like, this room we're sitting in, they all need new blinds. He's like, well, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I'm thinking we're moving in 5 years. I want the cheapest white blinds that you have. That's it. Like this should be a pretty easy sales call. In my head, I said that. I didn't say that out loud. I'm just like, yeah, cheap white blinds. Like that's all I need. Now, it should have only taken him a half an hour. Like, give me your value prop, help me understand why your product is different, and then give me a price, because I want the cheapest white blinds. And I did say I'd like them to last 3 to 5 years, because I don't want to do this again. It can become the next buyer's problem to deal with. Cheapest white blinds. Okay, this is not hard, okay? Every decision, he had to go on and on and on about why we might want this color or this color or this color or this color. What color would you like? And I'm like, white? It's like, okay. He would make a note of it, and he's like, and now let's talk about quality. We can go with this one or this one and this one and this one. And I'm like, what's the cheapest one? And never did he say, is price the biggest issue? I mean, because he should have already heard me say, I want the cheapest white blinds that are gonna work. So whole long, arduous, agonizing process, because I'm like, I just want the price. Like I have a checkbook, I'm ready, $4,000. I'll write it, here you go, come back in 3 weeks, fix my blinds, done. So we get to the end and he's like, okay, well, with all of the choices that you've made, I'm like, which I made an hour and a half ago when you walked in the door, cheapest white blinds, I'd already made all those choices. He's like, it's gonna be $6,500. I said, okay, well, understand that. Let me just be very transparent. We've budgeted $4,000. If it's $4,000, I will write you a check right now. We're ready to move forward. He's like, well, let me like give you the wink wink discount, and he does like all this math, and it ends up at like $5,500. And I'm like, I mean, like we budgeted $4,000. That's like I'm willing to pay $4,000 for blinds, cheap white blinds, cheap. And you're gonna come in and you're gonna install it, and I'm not gonna have to lift a finger besides writing the check. I'm good with that. And we go back and forth, and we're not budging because we're like $4,000, that's what we have. And so he finally says what every homeowner hates to hear. Well, let me call my manager, right? Which is like, had you agreed to pay more, I would have been happy to charge you that and rip you off, but I'm going to see if I can get you a special deal because you were stubborn. Okay, I'll be stubborn. I'm good with that. So he gets his manager on the phone. Yes, I'm here with Mr. and Mrs. Bleam. We've talked about all of the different options, and she went with the budget blinds in white, and I'm like, okay, wonderful. You finally heard me. I feel heard. It took an hour and a half, but we're good. And he's like, yeah, so they really wanted to spend a lot less. Yeah, their budget's $4,000. Well, it came up to $6,000. Yeah. I gave them the wink, wink, nod, nod discount. Sure, I'd be happy to put you on speakerphone. So puts the manager on speakerphone, puts it in the middle of the kitchen table. Now, I want to appreciate this manager's very, very difficult job. Now, he does now know my biggest objection is price, but he has no rapport with me. I have no idea who he is, and at this point in my head, I've said no, and I'm had to be stubborn to get him on the phone. So I am now in the mode of digging my heels in and being stubborn. That's not my fault. That's their sales process. I can't fix it. I'm sharing that with you because I want you to be able to kind of step out of the matrix every once in a while when you're selling and say, am I maybe causing things in my sales process inadvertently that are costing me sales? So anyway, we're chatting, and he's like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Bleam, well, thanks for having us out. Why are we doing this? Oh, you just finished redecorating your kitchen. Well, congratulations. And I am one of these high D people that, like, chit-chat is shoot me now. Like, it's just not my favorite thing. I can do it a little bit, but I don't want to do it a lot. So I'm just like, yep, kitchen renovation. Yep, we're done. This is the last thing. Okay, and I understand we have a challenge. No, we don't really have a challenge. I'm ready to write a check for $4,000. It's coming up as more than that. Can you meet us or not? And he's like, well, I just want to get to know you a little bit. What do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm a sales trainer. And the poor sales guy that completely let me take control of the sale early on and didn't do any bonding and had no idea what I did for a living, and I wouldn't let him tell me about their guarantee because I didn't care, because as long as they last 4 or 5 years, we're good, looked like he had swallowed a toad. So I'm like, I'm a sales trainer, and he's like, oh, like I'm gonna get in trouble tomorrow, and he probably did. Now, we then negotiated, and they could not meet us where we were, and I said, I'm sorry, $4,000, not $5,000, not $4,900, $4,000. Guy packed up and left, made 3 trips back out to his car. They then called me an hour later and said they'd be willing to meet me where I was. And I'm like, no, because if I'd agreed to your $5,000 or your $6,000, no, like you completely lost my trust. And so they called me multiple times, and I finally said, guys, I'm a sales trainer. I believe in know, like, and trust. That's not just like a bingo card checkoff thing. You guys need to go back to your sales process because it needs work. I'm out. Take me off your list. And we did go to Home Depot. Now, little thing, this is not, I was not planning to share this, but this room especially will appreciate this. So I get to Home Depot, and I'm purchasing the kind of blinds that they have to put in the machine, and then they saw it off, right? And so there's like all these giant yellow OSHA stickers, like don't touch the saw, okay? And I am a rule breaker, but I like my limbs and my fingers, so those are rules that I follow. But there's a wait, like there's only one guy who can run the saw, and he's doing something else over in kitchens, and so I'm just like, okay. So he comes over and he walks up to the saw, and he has to put a password in order to get the saw to work. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fantastic. And I'm like, you know what? Just can't do it. I can't do it. It's a Saturday. I'm off. This is not my client. But boy, and I'm not telling you which Home Depot it was because then maybe I'll be liable or something. But I'm like, holy cow. Like, guys, we talk about passwords all the time in this room, and the big box stores have no idea. So anyway, 24% of sellers don't listen. This guy didn't listen. White, budget blinds that you're going to come in and install and take the trash away and my life is golden. You could have had a sale in 30 minutes. Instead, hours later, waste my time, get me frustrated. No, I did not leave a Yelp review. I maybe should have. But that is the type of thing that can set you apart as a salesperson, because 75% of salespeople aren't listening. So again, with all of the concern about how do I make my company different, valid concern, valid goal, and we're going to be talking about that in a later session, but what if your sales process sets you apart? What if your prospect is talking to 3 MSPs and you're the only one that actually says, I'd like to know more about that. Tell me why you said that. I'm really curious. No one's ever said that to me before. That's an interesting perspective. Let's dig into that and talk about it. Instead of just going, oh, okay, let me make a note of that. So listening can set you apart. Oh, don't know what I hit, but the slide deck went away. I don't know what I hit. Let's see. The red button, I turned it off and back on again. All right, so how to conduct an effective discovery. This is where I want to bring this out of the theory and into real life, because you can apply this to your questions. You can also apply this same framework to proving the value of cybersecurity. I'm going to stress the discovery piece of this, but I'm going to briefly talk about also how you can use it to talk about your solution. So the 3 B's of discovery. Be patient. Maybe this is just for me. Maybe I'm the only one in the room. Okay, there's a couple of you laughing. Oh man, sometimes prospects just want to go on and on and on, and it has nothing to do with what you're trying to sell. Do you ever feel yourself like internally, your sponsors are raising their hand, like gritting your teeth and you're like, oh my word, are you ever going to shut up? Yeah, okay, so John is like me, yeah. Okay, so what happens if you interrupt? You're like, yeah, I got it already. Oh man, you can't do that. Now, be patient, just let them talk it out. Statistically, if you let someone talk, they're like, you're a great person, I like you. And you're like, all I did was let you listen to the sound of your voice. I like you. Okay, know, like, and trust. Be patient. That's a way that you can create know, like, and trust. Be inquisitive. You've already heard me say this a couple of times. I'm curious, why is that? Or have you ever heard, like, how did you come to that conclusion? That's interesting. That's fascinating to me. Be inquisitive. You want to understand where the person is coming from, especially when they say something that makes no sense. Like, well, we just won't use multi-factor authentication. Well, you've got the option of your hackles raise and you're like, well, you're just not a good client. I'm gonna find another client. Okay, that's an option. Or you can be like, well, our MFA is really, really good. Possibly true. Or you can be like, really? You refuse to use MFA? Why is that? Well, guess what they're gonna tell you? Why they don't want to use it. They're going to tell you their horror stories. They're going to tell you all about how awful their previous situation was and how it wouldn't work because they have Macs or whatever. Now you know what the objection is that you need to overcome. But only if you're inquisitive, only if you ask those questions. So if you immediately go, oh, you don't want to adopt cybersecurity, you're just a stinky prospect. No, like maybe you're just a stinky salesperson. That's fixable. I can't fix the stinky prospect. I can fix stinky salespeople. So inquisitive. And then finally, be persistent. I like to say that some buyers are instant pots and some buyers are crock pots. And so you have to be savvy enough to know which one you're talking to, and the ones that are ready to make a decision, great, get that decision. The ones that need a little more time, be a little more nurturing, be a little more patient, even if it doesn't come naturally, Jennifer, right? So you have to know who you're talking to and have the persistence to not just give up the first time they say, nope, I'm not paying that. Okay, let's have a conversation. Or maybe you have a conversation before you even get there so that you never even hear that objection in the first place. So some strategies for discovery. I want to teach you the 4 discovery checkpoints. Because you need to understand that when you're asking the prospect to open up their business to you, that there's a sense of vulnerability. So if you've ever been in a sales conversation and someone expects you to just like share all of your secrets, like, well, tell me about your marital problems. Like, no, I don't know you. I'm not going to do that. But some of you ask those types of questions in your discovery. Well, when's the last time you had a ransomware attack or a possible breach? When's the last time that your employees clicked a link they shouldn't have? There's a place for that, but there's a cadence for that. And I want to teach you the cadence. And I think once you see this, the blinders will come off and you'll realize where you're trying to go with discovery. So the first thing that you want to ask about is questions about the company. Company goals, company approaches, how does the company budget? How does the company budget for off-cycle items? Where does the company want to go? What are the company's goals? Do they want to get acquired someday? Do they want to start a new line of business? Are they about to make their own acquisition? Like, tell me a little bit about the company. I'm stunned when I talk to MSPs and they're like, I lost a deal. And I say, well, tell me about the company. And they give me the name of the company. And I'm like, okay, I mean, like I could Google it, but tell me about, who are they? And they're like, well, they do like medical and stuff. I'm like, I don't know what that means. They're like, yeah, I don't either. Okay, so y'all laughed, but how much time do you put into research before you go into a sales call? Like, at least go to their website, perhaps go to their social media. You can get really great and Google stalk the owners and the C-level, and almost anything is out on the internet. Just don't ask ChatGPT because it's really bad right now at giving you right answers, but wait a year. But how long does it take to Google? Most of the companies, not all of them, have a branded domain. So we're not talking about any more than 15 minutes of effort. So when I hear, well, I don't really know anything about that prospect, or worse, I don't really know anything about my clients. They just do like manufacturing. Well, of what? For whom? I don't know. It's just like they're just manufacturer. Okay, that's great. That tells you nothing. So company first. Company is easy for people to talk about. Then you move into something that's a little bit more detailed, maybe a little bit harder to talk about, department. Okay, you're the CFO, so who's under you? What are the kinds of things that your team members do every day, week, month? Then we get into things that are a little bit harder. Okay, now tell me about you personally. But can you see how if you start there, okay, Mr. CFO, what do you do every day? He's like, whoa, like who are you? But if you start with like company, then you're like, tell me about your team, now tell me about yourself. Then ultimately what you really want to get to is how their role is affecting them personally. Now this is really great if you're talking about cybersecurity, because you can start with the company and say, well, how would it impact your company if you had a massive issue and it got out, and would you care? Would your clients care? Who at your company would talk to the press? How would it impact your department? Oh, so your job is to pay your team members and to pay your vendors. So how would it impact you as a department if you had this same situation happen? Okay, how would it impact you personally? Because you told me your job is to pick out the tools and to make sure your team is working. So how are you going to do your job? And then ultimately, kind of the ideal, you don't have to do this 100% of the time, but if you can, it's fantastic. Ultimately, how is this going to impact you? This is really good if you're talking to a C-suite executive who has to be the one to call all of the clients. And you can say, how is this going to impact you when you can't make it home for little Johnny's baseball game? Or you miss your wife's birthday or anniversary? Like that hurts a lot more and at a different level than, well, what are you going to do if you have to put your acquisition plans off for a year? They both hurt. They're both painful, but it's a different level of pain. So use this as a structure for your discovery, because remember, discovery is for you to help the prospect to realize how underserved they are and help the prospect realize that this minor crack is actually going to become a massive gap if they don't do anything about it. And follow this, because you can go from easy to talk about to very difficult to talk about normally, but it just comes naturally because you're simply having a conversation and they will open up to you. So these are the 4 discovery checkpoints. Let me do a really quick talk about overcoming technical bias. And I may have shared this story last year, but if you heard it, it's worth hearing again. When my husband and I decided to start our MSP, well, let me restate. We decided to start a break-fix company with a franchise because there was no managed services at the time. He had been laid off from multiple big Fortune 500 companies and the big 5 accounting firms, and it was like, work your way up, be the best, highest paid person, get fired because they can hire the 20-year-old grunts, and let's rinse and repeat this every couple of years. Use up our savings, hey, it's time to do it again. So it got to the point where we were like, this is crazy. Like, we're building someone else's dream. What are we gonna do? And the job market was awful, and so we decided to start a business. So we broke the news to my parents and my grandmother, and they're very 9-to-5 jobs. They're not super entrepreneurial. That's just not in their nature. And my grandmother specifically really got chilly. I don't know how else to explain it. She's the kind of person that I would talk to a couple times a week. We were pretty close, but she literally wouldn't talk to me for weeks. And I'm like, okay, like, I get that starting a business is risky, and I mean, I understand, like, there's grandkids involved, you know, my children, her grandchildren involved, or great-grandchildren involved, but I'm like, I don't understand. So I finally went to her, and I'm like, you know, I told you that my husband and I are starting an IT company, and we're gonna help businesses, and we're gonna help fix their computer problems, and we're gonna help residential people also at the time, and, you know, make sure that they can print and they can save documents and stuff like that. And since then, you've been really, like you haven't talked to me. Like, you've almost been angry. And I'd like to understand, are you scared for my future? Like, what, because it's gonna be okay, I promise. What is going on? I will never forget. She said, you know, you and your husband are like good church-going people, and your husband's a deacon, and I just don't understand why you'd want to get involved with online porn.
Fair point.
Let's have a conversation, Grandma, because IT support and online porn, no. So, massive gap. Massive technical bias, because to her, why else would you want to own a computer? That's the only, right? That's the only thing computers are good for. So obviously a funny story. Obviously we explained this is not what we're doing. We are still good church-going people. We are not getting involved in online porn. Let me explain a little bit further. I still don't know if she really understood. At the time that she passed away, it boggled her mind that you could download a book like that. Like, it just, right? I mean, think about it. She didn't even have running water when she was a child, and now she is holding a Kindle, and instantly there's a whole book on it. It's like, it would scramble her mind. She just couldn't wrap her head around it. But your clients, to some extent, are the same way. What you do is mysterious and confusing, and maybe even a little snake oil sales, depending how much they know, like, and trust you. And so I need you to be very careful and pass your sales process and your sales conversation through the grandma test. Okay, no, you're not selling online porn, but how many times are you using acronyms? How many times are you assuming that they know you? Oh, of course we need to replace your firewall. They're like, of course. Well, you just said of course, and I'm the buyer, and I don't really know why, of course, I need to do anything. But I'm not going to ask you because now I'll feel stupid, and so then they nod. And I know in an earlier session we talked about the salesperson nodding and how that's assuming, and that's a bad thing. It is also a bad thing when your prospect is nodding, because when there's a whole lot of this going on, I can tell you there's not a whole lot going on up here. They're just nodding and going, okay, uh-huh. Okay, well, how quickly can you get out my door so I can go to Home Depot and buy my white blinds because you're not listening to me and I don't understand what you're saying. So be super cautious with technical bias because you are so good technically and your clients are generally so bad technically that you can think that you're translating it down to their level, but you may still be missing the boat. So just be very, very cognizant of that. So quick recap. Number one, listening. Most buyers want you to listen. Most sellers are horrible at listening. So position yourself as a difference maker by listening. Number two, the 3 B's. Where are my rock star note takers? Okay, give me one.
Be patient.
Be patient. Hold on, give me another one. Be persistent. Be inquisitive. Love it. Okay? Which one of those do you need to work on the most? Anyone willing to share? Be patient, okay. Anybody, so how many are gonna work on the be patient one? Yeah, that's like half the room, and my hand is up as well. Okay, how many of you are like, I need to be more inquisitive, I need to work on my curiosity? Yeah, okay, good. Give me the third one. Persistent. How many of you feel like that's a weakness? Okay, a couple? Not as many. That does not surprise me. Again, I'm in the right room, dig my heels in, I'll be stubborn all day long. All right, and then finally, the 4 discovery checkpoints, where you want to start by talking about what's easy, which is the company, then the department, then the role, and ultimately, personally, how is this going to impact them? So I'm going to share this slide one more time. You'll see this periodically throughout the day. I know one of you has already scanned this QR code and scheduled a call with me. I only have room to take on 5 clients this month. So if you're curious about what it looks like to work with me as a coach, let's have a conversation. I am so far from a hard sell sales coach because it doesn't make any sense. If we have a conversation and I can't help you, and I know that I can't help you, why in the world would I try to get into a close working relationship with you where you're not going to like working with me? Makes no sense to me. So if you're looking for a proven process for sales and marketing, grab a slot on my calendar. I just saw quite a few phones go up, so if there's no availability, please let me know and I will rearrange. I do a lot of blocking of my calendar, time blocking, and sometimes that does interfere a little bit with booking consults. Okay, I want to bring up solutions granted. Woo, 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 woo. Do you want to grab, can you grab, all right, perfect.
I don't know that I need this because I've got a very big mouth.
You do need that.
Thank you. Oh, I do. I thought you were saying I do have a big
No,
mouth.
you do need that.
I was going to agree with you. Thank you, Jennifer. I have a big mouth.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
Excellent. So Solutions Granted is our Platinum Plus sponsor. They purchased and sponsored lunch for us today, which is going to be, y'all are like,
so you're clapping now, but I'm standing in between you and your food for the next 10 minutes.
That's
so
right.
You can clap now or, boo later, whatever works for you. So my name is Michael, and I'm the CEO and founder of Solutions Granted, and we are a master managed security services provider. Very simply put, we're an MSSP for you. We don't go direct, we don't go around, we do it with you, we don't do it for you. We're based here in the United States, we don't outsource, we don't do anything overseas. But it's it. But let's talk about something cool, let's talk about something fun, let's talk about something different. So if you remember earlier this morning, Jennifer said something about dare to dream. All right, we're going to dream a little bit for the next 9 minutes and 22 seconds at least. And I'm about to make everybody a millionaire. Maybe. We'll see. So who woke up today and thought today was the first day of the rest of their life? I've got a couple. Not very many. Damn, that's kind of sad. Really? Nobody woke up and thought it was the first day of the rest of your life? All right, so let's journey down that path a little bit. If I walked around the room and I put $1,000 in front of every single one of you, would it make you happy? Nope. I got some no's out there. All right, 1,000's not enough. Well, let's step up my game because I said millionaires, right? All right, what if I give you $1 million? There's no strings attached, no taxes. You can walk out today. You don't have to share it with your spouse, your significant other, your children that are life-sucking everything out of you. It's all yours. You get to do anything you want with it. So now, did I make anybody happy? Now I've got happy people. All right. I'm going to up it just one more time because $1 million goes fast. Like, has anybody seen inflation? This shit's for real. How about $10 million? Now everybody gets $10 million. Same thing as before, but I got one catch. At midnight tonight, your life is done. It's over. You don't wake up tomorrow. Who wants my $10 million? I got a lot of no's happening right now. So nobody wants my $10 million? All right. Dan, you do not want my $10 million. Come on. I did this once before, and the guy says, my wife wants it. I was like, I'll bet you she does, but it's not transferable. I'm sorry. At midnight, it goes with you. It doesn't work that way. So I think what we just proved together is while nobody or very, very few people woke up saying that today was the first day of the rest of my life, everybody's not willing to end their life for $10 million. So when you wake up tomorrow, share this story with somebody. Think about how lucky you are to do it better tomorrow than you did it today. The challenges, the frustrations, the anger, that teenager that wore you out. I've got one of those right now, and she wears me out. I'm so thankful for her. I am on this journey with her, and she is on this journey with me, and we are growing together. The clients, the one that you know you're going to get that email, and the first thing you're going to do is like, damn it. I didn't want that email, but you want that email because if they're not there for you, you can't be there for them. Every day when you wake up, it is the first day of the rest of your life, and you have an opportunity to do something completely different than you did yesterday if you choose to. We can be more patient. We can be more kind. We can be more of anything we choose to be, but we have to choose. The free will that we have every morning will drive you down this path that gives you this opportunity to be something amazing and different and to be the leaders that we all know that we want to be and we can be. And if we think about the famous words of Ronald Reagan, and he's talking about leaders, it goes something like this. The greatest leaders aren't the ones who do the greatest things, but they're the ones who inspire others to do the greatest things. Inspire your clients to do the greatest things. Inspire them to use MFA. Inspire them to do the things that you know are the right thing for them to do. Don't do it all for them, do it with them. You have to be that change because they've come to you for a reason. And nobody came to me for my magnetic personality or my charming good looks, except for my 12-year-old son might disagree. Him I'm going to keep because that's my hype man. Just remember this. This is where you're at. This is the place you've chosen. These are the things that you're going to do, and you can do it better today than you did yesterday. So does anybody want to take me back on my $10 million? So nobody wants to be you want my $10 million? You really don't. I kind of know a little bit about you, and I think you've got this amazing life that you probably want to see forward. I mean, don't you have like a 10-year-old turning something tomorrow, birthday something? Yeah, that's really more important than doing that $10 million. So as we, say that? No, sorry, the million's off the table now. We upped the game because there wasn't enough people that wanted it, so we had to go there. I'm thankful for this opportunity to speak to all of you. I'm thankful for this opportunity that we can journey down this path together and to hear these amazing speakers like Jennifer, what we've heard from Mr. Hill over there. Not bad stuff, sir. Pretty impressive. Wes, I've never had an opportunity to hear you speak in live before, but that was pretty damn good. That was really good. You guys, I do a lot of these conferences. I have a lot of these opportunities. I'm going to tell you this is something special and unique that we don't get to see very often. Too often you see vendors coming up there and they're here to sell you their shit because that's what their job is. They've got to get you to buy. This is different. Jennifer's putting something different together that's amazing. Are any of you into reading good books? Because I'm going to tell you I read one that changed my life. It's called The Comfort Crisis. It's absolutely changed my life. And here's what I want to remind you with my last 4 minutes. When we were kids, we did really hard shit because all of the things that we were doing were brand new and it was hard, like riding our bike. Like we all thought we were going to crash and burn, and we did, but we got back up and we got on it. And we did it again, and we did it again, and we did it again, and then it became easy, right? How many of you are the business owners or principals out here today? When you started these businesses, did you think it was going to be easy? Nope. You were ready for the hard stuff, right? Do this every day in your life, in every aspect of your life, and watch what will happen. So I spent 9 years running around the world, jumping out of planes, kicking in doors, chasing bad guys, and I did really hard stuff. And at some point in time, I got lazy, I got soft, and I got complacent. And I forgot what it was like to challenge myself, not just mentally, but physically. Watch what you can do when you change your perception of how you can challenge yourself, because age is just a number. So I've put myself on this path to challenge that in 2 months from now, I'm going to ride 100 miles on my road bike in 1 day. Now, the most I've ever ridden on my bike, I don't really know, because as a child, I probably rode a lot because that's the way I got around as a kid. But 2 weeks ago, I rode 32 miles for the first time in my life. Didn't stop all the way through. When you can challenge yourself physically and mentally, the things that you will see that you can accomplish also in your personal and professional life will change drastically, and you will become much better for everyone around you, and you will inspire their change, and you will become the leader that inspires others to make change. Remember that. You can do really hard things. You've already decided to do some of the hardest things in your life. Well, what? Raising kids, that one's tough. That one kind of sucks every day. They get better, though. They do get better. I mean, I've got a 33-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, and I will tell you, like, the 33-year-old kind of thinks I'm cool again. The 15-year-old thinks I'm a jackass. Every day she tries me, but that's her job. This is a rite of passage. She has to do these things. Do the hard stuff that matters, because when you have the opportunity to speak to somebody, nobody cares about the easy story. Nobody cares about the silver spoon. Nobody cares that you were a trust fund baby. Nobody cares that you won $10 million. They just don't care. They want to hear what you've done with your life that can inspire them. So go do something that inspires them. If I've got 10 copies of the book that I will send to somebody of The Comfort Crisis. If you're looking for the most amazing book on leadership, there's a book called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. If you want to know what it's like to be a leader of men, and I'm talking about alpha males, Admiral McCraven was the commander of the SEAL team that went after bin Laden. He wrote this book. If you want to know what it's like to lead the toughest and roughest out there, go listen to Wisdom of the Bullfrog, and it might just change your life and remind you of why you decided to do what you're doing, because it is what we've all chosen through our own free will. I've got 1 minute left, and I'm not going to stand in the way of lunch, because I know I'm hungry. We're going to do a selfie with me and everybody, I'm told. All right, we're doing it. So, like, everybody has to wave or throw their gang signs or something. Oh, I've got to oh, you're in this with me? All right, I don't think it's photobombing when you jump in.
Oh, yeah. Look at Alex. Come on, guys.
Come on, we got this.
Love it.
Yep.
Oh, hold on, one more.
One more. Apparently, we're now really photobombing. Thank you, everybody. I hope you continue to have an amazing journey, and I hope one person comes up to me tomorrow and says, today was the first day of the rest of my life.
Love it. Thank you. So now I am standing in the way between you and lunch, but I promise this will be fast. So number one, make sure you go to talk to Michael Crane at Solutions Granted, talk to all of our sponsors. We also have a testimonial booth set up here. If you would like to share with your colleagues why they should come to this event next year, or a big takeaway, aha moment, something you're gonna shift in your business because of being at this event, go leave a testimonial. And be back in an hour. Now, something else, peek behind the curtains, the worst session of the day is right after lunch. So who do you give that session to? It's like, oh, who do I hate the most? Like, no, it's a horrible decision. So I gave the session to myself, but I also shared it with all of you because it's going to be a workshop. So that way you can kind of work off your lunch, not be sluggish. So we're going to talk about objection handling. And I'm going to tap a few people to come in, and we're going to work as tables on objection handling. I'm going to teach you my UTM framework for objection handling. So 1 hour for lunch, get your food. It smells amazing. Talk to the sponsors, give a testimonial if you would like, and be back in 59 and a half minutes. I'll see you then.